You've seen this round condemnation from Western powers of President Putin's actions in the Crimea. That hasn't come from China. You haven't seen that criticism of Russia. In fact, you've seen hints that China, if not supports the military standpoint of the Russian government, but perhaps the reasoning behind it. Let's first take a listen to the Chinese ambassador to the UN.
China consistently stands for the principles of non-interference in the internal affairs of a country and of respect for Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity.
Well, it doesn't necessarily sound that dramatic. In fact, the non-interference policy has been here for decades in China. But if you look at the other statements coming from China, and especially what they're not saying, there is an indication that they are frustrated with Europe's actions in Ukraine, particularly in the lead-up to the removal of the president there. They tend to say that that was because of Western interference. China has had an increasingly cozy relationship with Russia in recent years. You can remember that Xi Jinping made his first foreign trip to Russia when he became president of this country. Andrew?
Why is this relationship developing so cozily, as you say, between these two countries, David? What's the key points that they have in common?
Well, the two key points: they have a strong economic relationship, and also they have an urge often to be seen as a counterpoint to Western influence. Now, if you look at a Xinhua editorial, that's the main mouthpiece, state government media here, they had a very strident editorial come out, which goes a lot further than the official government line. They effectively saying that Russia is part of the solution in Ukraine, not part of the problem. I want to read you one section. It is time for Western powers to abandon their Cold War thinking, stop trying to exclude Russia from the political crisis. They failed to mediate and respect Russia's unique role in mapping out the future of Ukraine. Now, if you look at that, it's almost diametrically opposed to what Washington is saying. Of course, this isn't coming straight from the government, but it does indicate the Chinese authorities thinking that they believe that Russia has a point in terms of the reasons for this breakdown in Ukraine of the government, and also that Russia could be a solution and not a problem. That poses a difficult scenario for the White House and Western powers. Of course, it would be predictable that China would side with Russia on many foreign policy issues as it's done in the past. But in this case, it's a very direct action that's been taken by the Russian military. So the stakes have definitely been raised in the diplomatic arena.
We'd like you to see sort of the rhetoric sort of heat up from Beijing, given the fact that we are hearing those words you just read from Xinhua, which is fundamentally a mouthpiece for Beijing. Is it likely that Beijing will become more strident in their defence of Russia?
It's unlikely at this stage that they will come out very openly in public statements. You know, the Chinese government is very careful with its foreign policy when it comes to talking to the press or making statements. It's really about reading between the lines. One thing that's interesting is that in their official statements, they say that the reason why this is all unfolded is clear. Now, the analysis of that will most likely be, again, that they blame Europe and the West for the downfall of the Ukrainian government and the removal of its president. Now, in a country here like China, which really the Communist Party stands by its power to rule this country and never really looks kindly on any protest movements that overthrows a sitting leader. Now, it was the same with the Arab Spring. China is not going to look favorably on any protest movement that overthrows the government because of the domestic situation here. And then added to that is their relationship with Russia and the personal relationship with President Putin and President Xi that indicates that China is not going to be helpful at all in the White House or Europe's actions to solve the situation by removing Russian troops from the Crimea.